for years there was rumors. And then I can't remember if it was maybe Alyssa or someone kind of sat us down and said, yeah, this is happening. We've got about this amount of time before it's actually going to close. So it was kind of surreal, just hoping it wasn't true. And unfortunately, it did come to that.
JoAnne comes to us from both the hockey and figure skating community. And JoAnne's a mother of three, if you can believe it, 27, 25, and 20-year-old, as well, I should say, as a four-legged baby buster. She's been a kitchen and bath designer for about 25 years. And as I mentioned, she was a figure skater growing up and then took on hockey as an adult. Something that she really cherishes and shared with us is that she was able to be a ice team member for the San Jose Sharks for about 4 seasons, and she really chalks that up to having gotten into hockey. So with that, let's just jump right in. So we're going to chat with JoAnne today, but before we get started, be sure to like and subscribe to hear more of our content. So jumping right in, I was thinking a little bit about your bio, JoAnne, and it's really interesting that you transitioned from figure skating over to hockey. Can you talk a little bit about what caused that transition?
My son started playing, but on the peninsula, there really wasn't hockey. I didn't even know of it till later. And for what I understand, I think Belmont Iceland was one of the first places on the peninsula. So when my son started playing at about 6 years old, I had heard that there was a women's league. And they said, oh, you can skate, and why don't you give it a try? And history ever since then.
And what's something that you would like our listeners to know about ice hockey?
It's amazing. For me and for a lot of people, it's something that not just something to look forward to, but it challenges you mentally, physically. It's the one time you don't think about anything else except the game. No matter what's going on with work, personal life, kids, things like that, for a good hour and a half, that's it. It's just hockey. And then the icing on the cake are the people. You meet amazing folks and you become lifelong friends with them. And it does become your social life.
I love that. Like that sense of community is really there. And so now cut back a couple of years, back in 2016, I think that's around when we met. You were the assistant to the skating school director at Belmont Iceland. You also coached group and private lessons at summer camps at Belmont Iceland. Can you take us back to that moment in time and, kind of when you first learned that the rink was closing and what was going through your
I
mind?
have really fond memories of working there, doing the skating shows. We had a little family there, and not just with the people who work there, but the girls that would help with the camps, and so it was really, really special. And there was always rumors that things are not going great with the compressors down, and this is broken and that's broken, and we're always doing these band-aid fixes. For years there was rumors, and then I can't remember if it was maybe Alyssa or someone kind of sat us down and said, yeah, this is happening. We've got about this amount of time before it's actually going to close. So it was kind of surreal. You
Yeah,
kind
imagine.
just hoping it wasn't true. And unfortunately, it did come to that.
Yeah, no, really, really sad. Yeah, I remember hearing the news. I actually saw it in a newspaper and kind of texted my coaches and said, there's got to be something we can do. And obviously some of the origin story of S-Visa is there of, well, what can we do? And I'm sure we'll cover that a little bit more some other time. But yeah, no, it was such a shock that it was really happening. And I know those skating camps you're talking about as well. I worked in them, I think when I was in college, in Camp Freeze and those ones.
Yep.
So fun.
Yeah.
Such good memories. Everyone was just really awesome.
Yeah.
And then kind of in that 2016 timeframe, thinking back, I believe you were actually involved in another rink closure. Can you speak a little bit to that as well?
Yeah, so Bridgepoint had closed, and that was a real shocker. That one came from left field. We had no idea that that was actually going to happen. And you felt really helpless. You were kind of feeling you were up against the big corporate people, and that was it. You just had to deal with it. And I think my team ended up playing all the way down in San Jose. So we
Wow.
had to, do the 45-minute drive just to continue to play.
Mm. Yeah, can you speak a little bit more to some of the changing dynamics with the team and with the rink closures? Like how did you guys decide where to go next? How did that affect the teams? Like give me a little bit more of the what it was like at the time.
Um, yeah, I mean, you had no choice. You had to go somewhere. We weren't gonna not play. And I know that's true for even some of the figure skaters and coaches
Mm.
moved to other rinks. They had to. So it wasn't just the hockey community. I know my neighbor, her daughter, had to go to San Jose for those 5, 6 a.m.
Oof, yeah.
skating lessons. Yeah, yeah, all the way. We're here in San Carlos, so that's a good 45 minutes without traffic.
Wow. Now, and you guys kept it up. Were there people that you knew of who stopped skating as a result because, that commute was just too much?
Yeah, and not only that, San Jose, it's a beautiful rink. At that time there were 4 sheets of ice, so it was a
Mm-hmm.
much bigger place to go. So it didn't have that sort of homier feel than the single ice rink. Um, but yeah, some people just ended up just not skating anymore. It was too inconvenient.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too. Like one of the things that I remember and am very nostalgic about thinking back to Belmont is it really had a family feel. I worked there as behind the register for a little while, helping with IT, and everyone really knew everyone. And I've had corporate jobs since, and even like really nothing compares. Can you speak a little bit to that dynamic and
Oh
maybe what
God,
we both felt?
like
Yeah.
the skating show was always the funnest part because it was just all hands on deck. I mean, we'd work late, late hours. It was really fun, just coaching the little kids. I usually did the adult number, um, and then the actual show. We did a couple shows, and we after it was done, we would all just kind of and we just pat ourselves in the back because it was such a great accomplishment. And um, one of the neatest things is you would see for me, with the adults really pushing themselves. They
Mm.
took up skating as an adult, which to me is just beyond brave. And the little kids were on the ice in a performance for the first time, so you saw a lot of milestones reached. And so for me, the skating show was just kind of the epitome of the that family dynamics where we all came together and worked to get this thing done. And I proud to say I think we always put on a pretty good performance.
Yeah, I mean, every show I went to, every show I was in that I experienced, I should say, were just phenomenal. And the talent really comes together. I know, like, as an individual skater myself, I'd be out there and, you'd see like some pretty impressive things being landed and a little choreography here and there. But when you saw just kind of the accomplishments of the entire facility, everyone who
Mhm.
had been there, months prior, to me, it was really impressive that that was kind of what was going on behind the scenes, if you will, if you're on a public and someone skates by you really quick or whatnot. And yeah, I love what you said there. It's very charming, really impressive. And I love what you said too earlier about adults taking on skating. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think for some folks who maybe are new to skating or maybe less familiar with it, they may not understand kind of the differences and dynamic of skating, learning to skate as an adult versus when you're quite little.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for an adult to get out there and do something that where they could potentially get hurt, as a child, you kind of do it, without really thinking. So these adults would go out there and they push themselves, and even just a waltz jump or just a simple scratch spin, and then to do choreography was a whole different thing. So I, that was so rewarding to see them. Some people really were afraid to go out and do this in front of an audience. And I think for shows, we would fill the whole arena. So there's a couple hundred people in there.
That's true. That can be a little scary having that many eyes on you. You've taken
Yeah,
up this thing, as an adult that's new and potentially dangerous. You could break a
yeah,
hip as an adult that might not have happened as a kid.
yeah.
And, depending on what you're trying to land. I remember one coach telling me as I was working on an axle as an adult, they said, are you sure you want to do this? Like you could break your hip. And I went, but then I can't say I've landed an axle. And so I kept practicing till I landed it. But to your point, it's very different as an adult. The risks are totally different. And you don't grow or you don't heal as quickly as well. So
Yeah, we did have
yeah.
one gal that did break her leg,
Oh
unfortunately,
no.
before the show came on. But
Yeah.
she's super athletic, so she recovered.
That's
But
nice.
that's the level of risk that you're taking. And
Yeah.
the best reward was just they were so elated. Like we do the number, and maybe we made one or two mistakes, and we'd get off the ice, and there's this behind this, backstage. It was a curtain, really,
Mhm.
and just we were just high-fiving each other. We did it. It was amazing. And I don't think there's anything else in their lives that you
Mhm.
can challenge yourself like that. You know,
Yeah, I was gonna just ask you about that because as I'm thinking, sitting here as an adult myself, the joy that you're talking about is not really something you get in the corporate world. Maybe may or may not be in your personal life in other places. So yeah, can you kind of speak to the difference there and what that's like?
well, I mean, if you think about other adult recreational sports, there's, pickleball's a new thing, or if you're in an adult softball league or even a dance class, there are some places where you can actually perform. But the actual performing part of it and getting out there and doing it in front of an audience, I mean, that's just conquering a lot of people's really deep fears.
Sure.
And then to
Yeah.
do it and do it well is amazing. I don't know what you can even compare that to, really.
Oh, it's such a good point. I mean, I know people talk about public speaking in that way where,
Yeah.
they're just terrified to get up there. And it sounds like what you're getting at is, performance, I think brings a very similar level of anxiety and terror. And um, so it's almost conquering that fear of being in front of a group, with a new
Yeah.
skill as well. So the reward of it
And skating,
and
which is not the easiest thing in the world to do. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
It was
Oh,
what's
yeah.
really fun. There was some mother daughter, father,
Cute. Yeah.
Eric, the adult was in my number, and then their kid was in another number. So
Oh,
that just made it even that much more of
I
a
love
really neat
that. Yeah, the
pair.
family element almost it's almost this kind of like raw human emotion a little bit coming in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And can you speak a little bit to, the hockey community as well? So you're involved as a working with the skating director at Belmont Iceland and then hockey. Yeah, can you talk about the two communities and if there's any commonalities there as well?
Well, I mean, for the kids and some adults, you have to start with fundamental skating.
Mhm.
So it's not even really high; it's just skating at that point. And so that's kind of where I would do more of the beginner fundamental skating, and then they would either move up to like an in-house team, and then move on from there. One thing that's kind of neat is I am now with a gal that I coached back at Belmont, and she
Oh,
ended
is
up
that
going to
right?
college and playing club college. Her and her brother, skated there, and I see some of the guys that I play with. I had coached their sons, and now they're
Oh,
playing in college.
oh
So there's
wow.
that full circle, which just is really amazing.
I love that. No, that is so cool. And so the teams that you play with, are you typically, so it sounds like you were in San Jose and other places. Yeah, can you speak to kind of the different rinks and
Yeah.
what
So
does like the daily schedule look like of, someone in adult hockey?
So adult hockey is they're usually at nighttime. So I also play down in, believe it or not, Valco is still open. Played at
Yeah.
Redwood City, San Jose, and now back at San Mateo. Thank goodness. Thank you for getting that reopened.
Group effort, group effort,
Yeah, and I've
not one
done
person.
women's leagues.
Yeah.
I started in the women's league, ended up playing co-ed, do tournaments. So there's a lot of, I mean, you could, if you had the time, you could play every day
Wow.
between league play, and then they have daily pickup games, lunchtime pickup games. So some people take an hour off of work and run down to San Mateo and play a pickup game and go back to take a shower and go back to work.
Wow.
So it's out there more so than people realize.
What I've gathered is kind of the availability for hockey is like quite high, which is really nice as far as just accessibility and out there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
I mean, there
super
could
easy.
be more.
Sure, yeah.
Sport is growing. That's just adults, so we're not even talking the youth. Um, that's a whole other sector of people that need what we call ice time. So there, we could use more rinks, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, it seems like there's, constant competition. Can you talk a little bit more, I guess, about how, the competition for ice time has affected availability either of like types of sport or, who it's available to?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so, the adult hockey league, we have games at 10:45, 11 o'clock at night.
Oof. And
because
that's on a school night or a work
night,
night,
yeah,
right?
yeah, because you have to have, your public sessions, the youth hockey, the skating school. I think there's curling now and
Hmm.
some of the rinks, speed skating even. So you've got
Oh,
all
yeah.
these people who want that ice, and there's only so much ice. So it's pretty brutal skating, 11:15 on a Monday night.
Yeah, yeah, I was going to ask about that because then, I mean, if you skate at 11:15, what time do you then get off the ice, have to go shower and get like what talk me through what that schedule looks like if you're
Coming
running.
home at
Yeah.
1:30, 2 in the morning.
Ooh, wow. And is that
Out the
including like
locker room afterwards
I
and
was going to ask because a lot
uh,
of times the nice thing with adult hockey is you can get together after and socialize,
yeah,
maybe over
yeah,
beer or something. Um,
exactly. But you've got the you're kind of wired because you've just exerted yourself, so it kind of takes time to sort of wind down. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice if we didn't have games past 9 o'clock, but the reality is because of the lack of ice time, these games have to get the more people are playing, but there's no room to put anyone.
hmm. What do you think is the latest that you've ever played? Like rather than just the typical, like what's the latest
Yeah.
game that you've been on?
So an actual league game was 11:15. That was a regular
Wow.
time slot down in
Oof.
San Jose. San Mateo 10:45
Mm.
is played last night at 10:45. Doesn't
And
get later than that because I
wow. And you're talking to us from what city again? Remind me.
San Mateo. Oh, yeah. So San
So you're
Mateo,
driving from San Mateo to San Jose for a game at 11:15 potentially. And
I
or you
was back.
were.
Yeah, before San Mateo reopened,
Oh,
that's
okay.
where I had to go. Yeah.
Wow.
So when San Mateo reopened, I
Mm.
went back to somewhere that was 10 minutes away, which was a lot better.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely better. And it sounds like it's still tough to get time, even though we have just the one rink. I mean, we used to have where we used to have three, right? It's all consolidated to the one. And so
Yeah.
thankfully there is the one, but all this pent up demand has kind of, surged in one rink that, you know, maybe
Yeah.
can't service everyone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
that's
mean,
cool.
I think we're kind of in that with Valco, we're in that kind of where Belmont, we were wondering, there was rumblings of how long is this place going to stay open? So that
Yeah.
the rink down.
Do we know what's driving that? I've definitely heard those rumors as well, and it's
Yeah.
sort of just this like murmur that's coming from the community.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've been down there, but the mall is gone. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
there's been, I don't know, 15 years of proposals to revamp the mall and do actually, I've seen some proposals of what they want to do and just nothing's coming to fruition.
Hmm.
So we just hang on as long as we can and just hope we can continue to play down there for hopefully a couple more years. I mean, ideally, at one point they were saying they're going to rebuild it with 2 sheets of ice,
Hmm.
and
Oh,
that
interesting.
was really exciting. And then
Yeah.
that never,
Oof. Do we
yeah.
know? I mean, so I'm less familiar with Valco, but do you know what some of the like constraints are there? I mean, is it that they're looking at who's going to use the area? Like, do you have any kind of insights there as to?
Not really. I do know some folks who have a little more info about that, but then it's always rumors, so I can
Right. Yeah, it's always this person told this person told this person.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
so I know it's kind of tricky. Yeah, no, that's really sad. I mean, because Valco, right, is near quite a few of the tech companies. So that's going to be near like Apple, near
Yeah,
Google. I mean, any of
yeah,
your big, organizations that might actually need to have something at a lunchtime to go burn off some steam and then go back to, whatever work they're doing.
yeah, yeah. I think that went to at Redwood City, there was they called it a Facebook. Somebody was paying for ice time
Hmm.
for one of those lunch pickups, and I thought, well, I bet they could do a little more funding like that.
Yeah, you would think.
Kind of
You
be a
would
little
think.
drop in the bucket for those kind of companies, but yeah, one
Yeah,
can
no,
hope.
it's interesting that you say that because I know the Sunnyvale outdoor rink that we helped to reopen, or that we helped to open for a couple winners, and there's actually a contract to do a third at some point,
Oh,
TBD. Hoping that soon. They actually had some really good success with getting sponsors. So I believe Google and Facebook were both sponsors of that rink. So someone out there knows how to do that. And the question is, how do we kind of tap into that for a more permanent facility? And I,
yeah.
don't know that I have the answers today. Maybe someone listening might, but certainly seems that there's interest. And I even remember hearing about, GoPro, renting, all these tech companies will rent
Yeah, they
ice for
did. They
different
were
stuff.
renting ice at Belmont like at midnight, and they were
Wow.
testing. I remember I was there. I was working at Belmont, and they were doing things like um, skating really fast past cones and just kind of
Hmm.
doing all these tests on the ice. So yeah, I could see how companies can do things like that.
Yeah, I've heard other rumors that are, well, I've heard of other tech companies doing similar things that I probably
Mhm.
can't speak to on here, but it does seem like a lot of the tech organizations will actually use the ice for testing. So it would seem to me that there's some opportunity there. So I guess with our listenership, if anyone knows someone in those groups, definitely reach out to us, and we'd love to chat with them and see what we can do. But yeah, there's so much interest from the area. Just it seems like we need the right timing and the right people. So
Yeah, and I hope that this is what this podcast does, because I know we're all thinking it, and it's just
exactly.
sort of just getting people together to get the conversation going again. And like you said, just reaching out to the people who can get those things accomplished would be really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do hope that, part of the goal of our podcast here is certainly to spread awareness and to, kind of bring back all these stories that were lost. I mean, as we were talking about earlier, just the story of, high-fiving behind a curtain as the, skating performances are ending. I mean, that brought back memories just for me of like, oh yeah, I remember having to run in and run out,
Yeah.
for my little performances, and people were so kind and so, you know, like just wonderful people. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes skating can get a bad rap for being this like highly competitive sport, and it certainly is at some levels. But I mean, the thing that, and I think this is what you were getting at, but the thing that I always really enjoyed, especially about skating at Belmont, is that it was always a team. Like you were on a team, your friends were there cheering you on.
Yeah.
There were people your age, younger, older, but everyone was high-fiving. I mean, everyone was supporting no matter what level. If you were, amateur, medium, professional, like we were all there for each other. And I think
Yeah. Yeah.
that was just
Absolutely.
so heartwarming all the time. So no, I love that. So okay, so we talked a little bit about hockey, we talked a little bit about figure skating. Let's dive into some numbers here. So can you share just a little bit more about, the size of the hockey community, and maybe statistics around that?
Yeah, so I had read there's USA Hockey is where a lot of like San Jose, you have to be registered with USA Hockey to play there. If you wanted to play certain tournaments, you pay a membership fee, a yearly membership fee. It's kind of like if you're into golf, you do an NCGA membership. But their numbers have increased by 20-30% just in registration across
Wow.
the country. I know women's hockey has gone up considerably. Just that San Jose rink alone, there's a couple thousand people playing just
Wow.
not even figure skating.
Yeah.
San Mateo was around, I think the just for the league that I play in, we have um, there's I think 10 or 12 teams
Hmm.
each night, and there's 13 people on each team. So
Wow.
we were, in the 300 to 400 people just for the rec league hockey.
That's
There's
amazing.
men's league, so there's another couple hundred there.
Jeez.
There's youth hockey. There's another couple hundred there.
And those
There's
those are like unique players. That's not like one person is going like 10 times. Those are like individual people who are going to these different leagues. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you have those lunchtime pickups. So every day at noon, you've got at least 24 people playing. There's also private pickups. So people have been renting ice for years, since Belmont, and they carried it over to San Mateo,
Oh
and they
wow.
have a regular group of people that play every week. It's just
Hmm.
you just invite your friends, and somebody pays for the ice, and you reimburse them, and so there's a whole other, I don't even know the numbers for that one, but that's probably easily another 100 or 150 people there. So that's just San Mateo alone.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so not even including um, there's Fremont Ice, Cupertino, and then there's skating school. So that's
Yeah.
a whole other thing. And from what I understand, the numbers are going up with that as well.
Well, and we're about to be in an Olympic year too, so I know that there's always
Yes.
kind of some seasonality there. So
Yeah.
probably as we get closer, there's going to be a lot more competition for ice time. I imagine pricing is going to go up as well, and I do think that that's something that, skaters get a lot of complaints about. Maybe we can address it later on the podcast, but, can you speak a little bit to that as well? As far as impacts, obviously driving far is really difficult, adds commute time, adds, certainly pollution, but can you speak a little bit to pricing? Has that changed at all over the last couple of
It's
years?
gone up for sure. Yeah. I mean, that's just like everything else, but ice time has gone up. I
Yeah,
think part of it might have been COVID recovery.
sure.
It's funny. I was just remembering when I was figure skating back in the early 80s and a private lesson, and you had to do figures back then too, was like 60, $70 an hour. And I
Wow.
don't think that's changed much.
Huh.
I don't really
Yeah,
know.
that's interesting. I think that's
But
pretty
I
stable.
think it's kind of maintained because again, when I was working at Belmont, I think private lessons were still around that price range. So that was a good thing that it didn't go too high. Um,
Interesting. Yeah.
but I think public sessions are a lot more expensive. I think they went from like 15 to $25. So just everything's has gone up. It's just a sign of the times.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's definitely what I've noticed as well, not naming names, but there's definitely like some rinks that, are definitely charging a lot more and it's, hard to argue with it, because they're the only rinks around. So it's
Yeah.
definitely tricky to, on a regular basis pay that as well. And, obviously housing costs a lot here too. So we're now balancing, prices of staying healthy with, just price to live somewhere. And it's definitely tricky. And I do hope that our, public leaders start to hear, the issues that we're having here, maybe can help in some way. So, yeah, definitely hoping this gets out to them.
Yeah, I do too. One of the things that when we were all fighting, going to city council meetings to keep Bridgepoint open, you really realize a lot of things. Like one of the things that stood out to me, and I kind of, have my eye. I'm seeing all these multi-level condos and
Mm.
apartments going. So our population is growing,
Yes,
and
definitely.
our recreation is going away. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
so they closed Malibu. We need, if you're going to bring all these people in, we need to have things like skating rinks. Yes, soccer fields, all that. It just goes hand in hand to create a balanced community. We can't
And
just all live in high rises and
yeah, no,
home all
exactly.
day.
And I mean, I can share too, like in my travels around the world, like I've seen, Taiwan, for example, has their ice rink on a second floor. Hong Kong has their ice rink on a 10th floor. I mean, it's not a perfect
Wow.
blueprint to have an ice rink at the first floor of a building, which is tending to be what we do in the Bay Area. But if we really think about it, these rinks don't have to be these sort of, cookie cutter rinks that we see here. If we
Yeah.
got creative with development and we got creative with our, city zoning, there's so many possibilities here. So
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of, really working with our local authorities to ensure that, to your point, we're not just building housing. Yes, okay, absolutely, we have a housing affordability crisis. It is so darn expensive to live here. But on the other hand, if all we're doing is we're waking up and we're, going to work and then we're going back to sleep, we're not exercising, we're not working on, removing our stress by exercising, we're not living a healthy, fulfilling life. So what kind of life is that? I ask myself.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
agree. Yeah.
Um, but, I think we're almost close to the end of our time here. So I definitely want to wrap things up. Is there anything else that you want to tell our listeners or, final shout outs as we wrap up?
No, I think this is great, and I hope it sparks interest, and like you said, with our city officials and maybe some corporate people, and
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
that might be the thing that really gets things going. So just keep at it, and you've always been such a great advocate for keeping this going, and I appreciate that. And everyone was a part of that whole Bridgepoint fight, so just keep at it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and likewise, thank you for your support over the years of, helping and showing up and doing things like this. It's always a changing effort of what it takes to spread awareness, and I really appreciate it. And I want to, thank our listeners too for joining in today. This has been awesome chatting with JoAnne, and hopefully we'll hear more from her soon, and we'll definitely tell you guys more about the efforts as they continue. So thanks for tuning in, and be sure to like and subscribe today to stay more aware of our upcoming efforts and more
Yeah, look
information
for
on the podcast.